I've transferred your research patent to your stepsister. My father's voice crackled through the phone, casual as if he were discussing the weather. She deserves it more than you. She'll know how to properly commercialize it. I stood in my lab at Stanford, gripping my phone so tightly that my knuckles turned white. The breakthrough I'd spent 5 years developing, the research that had consumed my entire life since graduate school, my father had just given away as if it were his to give. My name is Alexandra Carter, and at 32, I'm a biochemical researcher specializing in targeted drug delivery systems. My work could revolutionize cancer treatment, making it more effective with fewer side effects. And my father, CEO of Carter Pharmaceuticals, had just tried to hand it over to my 25-year-old stepsister, Madison, whose greatest achievement was earning an MBA from an online university. "You can't do that," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. "The patent isn't yours to transfer." "Of course it is," he scoffed. "Carter Pharmaceuticals funded your research. Everything you develop belongs to the company. And as CEO, I decide who handles what." He paused, and I could picture his self-satisfied smile. "Madison has the business acumen you lack. She understands the market." I glanced at my computer screen, where an email from the U.S. Patent Office sat open, confirming receipt 3 months ago. What my father didn't know was that I'd seen this coming. He'd been systematically pushing me aside ever since he married Madison's mother 2 years ago, gradually removing me from key projects despite my expertise. "Well," I said carefully, "I hope Madison enjoys trying to commercialize research she doesn't understand. Is there anything else?" His pause told me he'd expected tears, protests, maybe even begging. My calm acceptance threw him off balance. That's all. I'll have legal send over the transfer papers. Good luck with that." I replied and ended the call. The moment the line went dead, I sent a quick text to my lawyer, Sarah Martinez. He did it, just like we predicted. Then I sat down at my desk, hands shaking, not from fear, but from anticipation. The wheels I'd set in motion months ago were about to start turning. I thought back to the day everything changed when my father introduced us to his new wife, Deanne, and her daughter, Madison, at the company's annual charity gala. I just finished presenting my preliminary research findings to potential investors, and the response had been overwhelming. But instead of congratulating me, my father steered the conversation toward Madison's recent MBA graduation. "Madison will be joining the company as head of strategic development," he denounced proudly. "She'll help modernize our approach, bring fresh perspectives." I watched as my years of hard work, my doctorate in biochemistry, my published research, all faded into the background while Madison became the new golden child. At first, I tried to collaborate with her, to share my knowledge of the industry and our research protocols. But it quickly became clear that Madison wasn't interested in learning. She wanted control. The signs were there, my access to certain labs restricted, my research team gradually reassigned, my funding quietly reduced. Then I started noticing Madison in meetings about my drug delivery system, taking notes, asking questions that revealed her fundamental lack of understanding of the science involved. That's when I contacted Sarah, an old friend from college who specialized in intellectual property law. Document everything she'd advised, every email, every restriction, every change. And most importantly, file your own patent application independently of Carter Pharmaceuticals. I worked nights and weekends, carefully documenting every aspect of my research that wasn't directly funded by company resources. The breakthrough itself had come during my own time, using my personal lab equipment meticulously logged and verified by independent witnesses. My phone buzzed with a response from Sarah. "Papers filed with USPTO. Your independent patent application is solid. Their transfer attempt will trigger the investigation we've been waiting for." I opened my drawer and pulled out a thick folder labeled Project Shield. Every document, every email, every piece of evidence showing how my father and Madison had systematically tried to push me out and steal my research. The official company records would show that while Carter Pharmaceuticals had funded some early stages of my research, the key breakthroughs and methodologies were developed independently. Another text from Sarah. "B2, that business acumen your stepsister claims. I did some dating. Her online MBA program isn't even accredited." I wasn't surprised. Madison had always been more focused on appearances than substance. She spent more time posting on LinkedIn about being a female pioneer in pharma than actually learning about pharmaceutical development. My office phone rang. Madison's extension. I let it go to voicemail, already knowing what she'd say. Sure enough, her message was exactly what I expected. Alex, we need to discuss the transfer of your research project. I have some ideas for monetization that you clearly haven't considered. Call me ASAP. I started gathering my things, knowing the next few hours would be crucial. The patent challenge would trigger an automatic investigation into the research's origins and development. Every document would be scrutinized, every claim verified. As I packed my laptop, my phone buzzed again, this time with an email from the company's legal department. The subject line read, "Urgent, IP transfer documentation required." I forwarded it to Sarah without opening it. The elevator ride to the parking garage gave me time to reflect on how we'd gotten here. My mother had founded Carter Pharmaceuticals with my father 30 years ago. She was the scientific genius. He handled the business side. When she died of cancer 10 years ago, I devoted myself to continuing her work, believing that together, my father and I could honor her legacy. But something changed in him after he met Deanne. Suddenly, the company's scientific foundation became secondary to its market value. Research timelines were rushed, protocols shortened. Madison's arrival was the final straw. Suddenly, everyone had to prove their worth in terms of market potential rather than scientific merit. As I reached my car, another call came through, my father again. This time, I let it go to voicemail. He'd have plenty to say to me soon enough. But first, he needed to learn some hard truths about what he'd just tried to give away. I drove straight to Sarah's office, where she was waiting with her team. The conference room walls were covered with timelines and documents, the paper trail we'd been building for months. Right on schedule, Sarah said as I walked in, "Your father just tried to file the patent transfer paperwork." As expected, it triggered immediate flags with the USB TOV since your independent application is already on file. How long until they realize? I asked, setting my laptop on the conference table. They probably already have. The USB TOV would have immediately notified them of the existing patent application. Sarah smiled. I guess your father is having a very interesting conversation with his legal team right now. As if on cue, my phone lit up with a text from my father. What have you done? I showed it to Sarah, who nodded approvingly. Perfect. Let them sweat while we prepare our response. We have meetings set up with the patent office tomorrow morning. Your documentation is impeccable. They won't be able to claim corporate ownership of your independent research. I thought about Madison, probably sitting in her new office, planning how to take credit for work she couldn't begin to understand. I thought about my father, who'd been so quick to dismiss my contributions in favor of his new family's ambitions. What happens next? I asked Sarah, though I already knew the answer. Next, we watched them try to explain how they plan to transfer a patent they don't own. The USB TOV takes attempted patent fraud very seriously. Your father's going to have to choose between admitting he tried to steal your research or claiming he didn't do due diligence before attempting to transfer intellectual property. Either way, it's not going to look good for Carter Pharmaceuticals. My phone kept buzzing, calls from Madison, my father, the company's legal team. I silenced it and focused on the documents in front of me. For the first time in years, I felt completely certain about my path forward. I signed the incorporation papers, officially bringing Carter Biotech into existence. A final text from my father. We need to talk. Now. I smiled. Yes, I typed back. We certainly do. The next morning, Carter Pharmaceuticals' legal department was in chaos. I watched from across the street as lawyers rushed in and out of the building, carrying stacks of papers and wearing expressions of barely concealed panic. My father's attempted patent transfer had backfired spectacularly. Sarah sat beside me in her car, calmly reviewing our documentation one last time before our meeting with the USB TOV representatives. Your father has called 6 times in the last hour, she noted, glancing at my phone. Should we hear what he has to say? I shook my head, watching another group of lawyers hurry into the building. He had plenty of chances to talk before he tried to steal my research. Let him sweat. My phone buzzed again. Madison this time. Her message made me laugh out loud. This is just a misunderstanding. Daddy was trying to help you by putting more qualified people in charge of your project. Don't ruin everything because you're jealous. More qualified? Sarah snorted, reading over my shoulder. Does she even understand what your research involves? She thinks drug delivery systems are like Uber for medicine. I replied dryly. Last month, she suggested we should make an app for it. Our meeting with the USB Tove wasn't until 10 a.m., but we'd arrive early to watch the drama unfold. Through the glass walls of Carter Pharmaceuticals' lobby, I could see people gathering in the conference room. My father, Madison, Deanne, and what looked like half the legal team. Ready? Sarah asked as another call from my father lit up my phone. I nodded, gathering our files. More than ready. We walked into the building just as Madison rushed toward the elevator. She stopped short when she saw me, her perfectly maintained composure slipping for a moment. Alex, thank God. You need to call off whatever this is. Daddy's furious, and you're making us look bad. She reached for my arm. But I stepped back. Making me look bad? I raised an eyebrow. You mean like trying to steal a patent you have no right to? Steal? She laughed, but it sounded forced. Don't be dramatic. We're family. Everything in this company is family property. Carter Biotech isn't family property, I replied calmly. And neither is my research. Her perfectly plucked eyebrows drew together in confusion. Carter what? Before I could respond, my father's voice boomed across the lobby. Alexandra. In my office. Now. I turned to see him standing in the doorway of his corner office, his face flushed with anger. For a moment, I saw him as I had as a child. The intimidating figure whose approval I'd always sought. But that spell had been broken. Actually, Sarah stepped forward. Any discussions will need to happen with counsel. Present. We have a meeting with the USPTO representatives in 20 minutes. Shall we all convene in the main conference room? I watched my father's face darken as he recognized Sarah. He'd met her at company events before. But I doubted he'd ever imagined she'd be standing here in this capacity. This is a family matter, he growled. No, I corrected him. This is a legal matter. You tried to transfer a patent you don't own. That's fraud. The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. Several employees passing through the lobby stopped to stare. Madison's face had gone pale. Conference room. My father snapped, turning on his heel. Everyone. Now. The next few minutes were a blur of activity as lawyers shuffled papers and people took their seats. I sat across from my father, with Sarah beside me. Madison hovered uncertainly before taking a seat next to Deanne, who was trying her best to look concerned rather than annoyed. The USPTO representatives arrived precisely on time. Two serious-looking women who introduced themselves as Dr. Patricia Wong and Ms. Andrea Martinez. They wasted no time getting to the heart of the matter. We're here to address a serious issue, Dr. Wong began. Yesterday, Carter Pharmaceuticals attempted to transfer patent application No. 63-197-421 to Madison Carter. However, this patent was independently filed by Dr. Alexander Carter 3 months ago, with no corporate affiliation. There must be some mistake, my father interrupted. All research conducted by Alexander was done under Carter Pharmaceuticals' umbrella. Any resulting patents belong to the company. Sarah smiled, sliding a document across the table. Actually, we have extensive documentation showing that the key breakthroughs were developed independently, using Dr. Carter's personal resources and time. The next hour was excruciating for my father and Madison as Sarah methodically presented our evidence, the independent lab logs, documentation of how my access had been restricted, emails showing the systematic attempt to push me out. It all painted a clear picture. Furthermore, Sarah continued, we have evidence that Ms. Madison Carter has been falsely representing her qualifications. Her claimed MBA is from an unaccredited institution, which raises serious questions about the company's due diligence in attempting to transfer complex biochemical patents to her supervision. Madison's face went from pale to red. That's not relevant. My degree is just as valid as Alex's. Is it? I asked quietly, then perhaps you can explain to everyone here how my targeted drug delivery system works, since you're so qualified to take it over. The silence that followed was deafening. Madison looked to my father for help, but he was staring at the documents in front of him, his face ashen. Dr. Wong cleared her throat. Based on the evidence presented, it's clear that patent application No. 63-197-421 was properly filed by Dr. Alexandra Carter as an independent researcher. Any attempt to transfer it without her consent would constitute patent fraud. Additionally, Ms. Martinez added, we'll need to investigate the circumstances surrounding this attempt to transfer. Patent fraud is a serious offense. My father finally looked up, his expression a mix of anger and desperation. Alexandra, you can't do this to the company, to our family. Our family? I repeated, my voice steady but cold. You mean the family that tried to steal my life's work? The family that pushed me aside for someone who doesn't even understand basic biochemistry? I was trying to protect you. He exploded. You're brilliant in the lab, but you don't understand business. Madison knows how to monetize research, how to make it profitable. Like she monetized her fake MBA. The words came out sharper than I intended, but I couldn't stop. Or maybe like how she planned to monetize research she can't even comprehend. Madison burst into tears, her usual strategy when things didn't go her way. Deanne wrapped an arm around her, blaring at me. There's no need to be cruel, she snapped. Madison was only trying to help. Help? I laughed. By stealing my patent? By trying to take credit for years of my work? Enough. My father slammed his hand on the table. What do you want, Alexandra? Money? A promotion? Name your price. Sarah and I exchanged glances. This was the moment we'd been waiting for. Actually, I said, sliding the Carter Biotech Incorporation papers across the table. I don't want anything from Carter Pharmaceuticals. I've started my own company. My research, my patents, my future, they all go with me. The silence was absolute. My father picked up the papers with trembling hands, his face growing redder as he read. You can't compete with us, he finally said, but his voice lacked conviction. We have the resources, the connections. You have Madison's expertise in making apps, I countered. I have the actual science. Let's see which matters more to investors. As Sarah and I left the building, my phone buzzed. An email from an investor who had been excited about my research at that fateful gala. The subject line read, interested in backing Carter Biotech. I smiled, showing it to Sarah. The future was already looking brighter than the past. Ready to change the world? She asked. More than ready, I replied. The first month of establishing Carter Biotech passed in a blur of meetings, paperwork, and late nights. I had secured temporary lab space at a biotech incubator, and several of my former research team members had joined me, eager to continue our work without corporate interference. I was reviewing grant applications when my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. Dr. Alexandra Carter speaking. Alexandra, it's Charles Montgomery from the FDA Advisory Board. My heart skipped a beat. Montgomery was a legend in pharmaceutical regulation. I heard about your split from Carter Pharmaceuticals, quite the splash you're making in the industry. I straightened in my chair. I hope it's the research making the splash, not the family drama. He chuckled. Both, if we're being honest. But I'm calling about the research, your targeted delivery system. It's impressive. We'd like you to present at next month's Innovation Summit. Before I could respond, Sarah burst into my office, her face tense. Alex, turn on the financial news. Now. I quickly put Montgomery on speaker and pulled up the news feed on my laptop. My father's face filled the screen, standing at a podium in the Carter Pharmaceuticals lobby, proud to announce our groundbreaking new drug delivery system. He was saying, developed by our brilliant head of strategic development, Madison Carter. The coffee mug in my hand crashed to the floor. Is that what I think it is? Montgomery asked sharply. They're trying to steal my research, I said, watching in horror as Madison stepped up to the podium, wearing a lab coat like some kind of costume. They're announcing it as their own. We expect FDA approval within months. Madison was saying, reading carefully from note cards, our proprietary system uses targeted molecular recognition to deliver therapeutic agents directly to disease cells. Those are my words, I whispered. That's from my patent application. Sarah was already on her phone. Get me Judge Harrison. Yes, I know what time it is. This is an emergency injunction situation. Montgomery's voice cut through the chaos. Alexandra, I'm going to hang up now because I suspect I'll be involved in the official response to this. But off the record, nail them to the wall. The next few hours were a whirlwind. Sarah's team filed for an emergency injunction while I gathered every piece of documentation proving the origin of my research. The biotech community buzzed with confusion and speculation. Around midnight, my father finally called. Bold move, I answered, my voice cold. This could have been avoided, he said, sounding tired. You could have stayed, been part of the family business. Instead, you forced our hand. Forced your hand into committing patent fraud on national television. It's not fraud if it's our research. Everything you did while employed here belongs to us. You know that's not true. I shot back. You saw the documentation. The USPTO confirmed my independent patent. What you're doing isn't just unethical, it's illegal. It's business, he snapped. Madison's announcement has already boosted our stock price. By the time any legal challenges play out, we'll have established market position. You really think you can get away with this? I think you should consider coming back, he said. His voice softening slightly. There's still time to fix this, to be a family again. I thought about my mother, about how devastated she would be to see what he had become. We stopped being a family the moment you tried to steal my work. The line went dead. Sarah arrived early the next morning with news. Judge Harrison granted the emergency injunction. Carter Pharmaceuticals has to cease all public claims about the delivery system pending a full hearing. That won't undo the damage, I said, showing her my inbox full of concerned emails from potential investors. They're creating market confusion, making people question the legitimacy of my research. Then we fight back. Not just legally, we need to tell our story. She pulled out her tablet. The Wall Street Journal wants to interview you. So does Nature Biotechnology. People need to hear the truth from the actual scientists behind the research. I hesitated. I had always preferred letting my work speak for itself. But now, Alex, Sarah said gently, your father is counting on you staying quiet, staying professional. That's how they'll get away with this. Sometimes the best offense is a good offense. She was right. That afternoon, I sat down with a journal reporter and told her everything about my mother's legacy, about being pushed aside for Madison, about the attempted patent theft. I walked her through the science, making it clear which parts were my independent research. The story broke the next morning. Biotech battle. Daughter claims father's company tried to steal cancer research. The scientific community erupted. Former colleagues reached out to support my version of events. Other researchers shared similar stories of corporate theft attempts. Madison tried to do damage control, scheduling interviews to defend her role. But she crumbled under basic technical questions, making it painfully obvious she didn't understand the science she claimed to have developed. Then came the bombshell. Dr. Wang from the USPTO gave a statement confirming my independent patent application and the investigation into Carter Pharmaceuticals' attempted transfer. The company's stock price plummeted. I was in the lab running tests with my team when Dinan showed up unannounced. You're destroying your father, she said without preamble. Is that what you want? I carefully set down my pipette. He's destroying himself. I'm just refusing to be collateral damage. He built this company from nothing. He built it with my mother. I corrected. And she built it on real science, not fraud and theft. Dinan's perfectly maintained facade cracked slightly. Just tell me what you want. Money? A public apology? Name your price to end this. I looked at her designer outfit, her expensive jewelry, all funded by the company my mother helped create. I want what's mine. My research, my patents, my reputation. Nothing more, nothing less. You're being stubborn. No, I cut her off. I'm being honest, something this family seems to have forgotten how to do. After she left, one of my researchers, Dr. Park, approached hesitantly. Dr. Carter, The preliminary trials, you might want to see this. The results were better than we had hoped. The delivery system was showing unprecedented accuracy in targeting cancer cells while leaving healthy tissue unaffected. This wasn't just about patents anymore. This could save lives. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Turn on CNBC now. Madison was giving another interview, but this time something was different. She looked nervous, fidgeting with her notes. A mess. Carter, the interviewer was saying, multiple sources have questioned your credentials and your role in developing this technology. Can you explain exactly what your contribution was? Madison's composure cracked. I helped with the business side, the monetization strategy, but you claim to have developed the actual delivery system. That is, Daddy said. She burst into tears and ran off camera. Within hours, Carter Pharmaceuticals issued a statement clarifying that Madison had overseen, but not directly developed the technology, but the damage was done. Their credibility was shattered. That evening, my father's oldest friend and Carter Pharmaceuticals head of research, Dr. James Chin, visited my lab. Your mother would be proud, he said, looking around. She always said you had her gift for seeing what others missed. Did you know? I asked. I suspected. Things changed after your father married Deanne. Suddenly, everything was about quick profits, market perception. Science became secondary. Why didn't you say anything? I should have, he admitted, but I'm saying something now. Half the research department wants to work for you. I looked around at my lab, at the work we were doing, at the lives we could save. This was what my mother had wanted: real science, real progress, real integrity. One more thing, Sarah added, that interview you did, it's going viral in the scientific community. You're becoming a symbol for women in science, standing up against corporate theft. People are calling you the future of biotech. I smiled, thinking of Madison in her costume-like lab coat, pretending to be something she wasn't. No, I said, I'm just being who I've always been, my mother's daughter. The FDA investigation into Carter Pharmaceuticals revealed more than just attempted patent theft. Internal audits uncovered rushed trials, manipulated data, and a pattern of cutting corners that stretched back to shortly after my father's marriage to Deanne. I was in a meeting with potential investors when Sarah burst in, her face flushed with excitement. Alex, turn on the news. Now. The headline scrolling across the screen made my heart stop. Carter Pharmaceuticals CEO steps down amid investigation. There was my father, looking aged and defeated, reading a prepared statement. In light of recent events and the ongoing FDA investigation, I am announcing my immediate resignation as CEO of Carter Pharmaceuticals. I acknowledge that under my leadership, the company strayed from its founding principles. The investors, representatives from 3 major venture capital firms, watched with keen interests. Well, said Victoria Chang, the lead investor, I'd say this makes our decision easier. Dr. Carter, your mother built Carter Pharmaceuticals on scientific integrity. From what we've seen, you're doing the same with Carter Biotech. 2 hours later, I had $50 million in series of funding and a clear path forward for my research. My phone buzzed constantly with messages, former colleagues, industry contacts, even old family friends. But one message stood out. Can we talk? Madison. I almost deleted it, but curiosity won out. We agreed to meet at a quiet cafe far from both our offices. Madison looked different. No designer clothes, no perfectly styled hair. She seemed smaller somehow, more real. I'm sorry, she said as soon as I sat down. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need to say it. I studied her face, searching for the manipulation I'd grown used to seeing. Instead, I found something that looked like genuine remorse. Why did you do it? I asked. You must have known you'd be exposed eventually. She stared into her coffee. Daddy made it sound so simple. He said you were being selfish, that family companies needed to stick together. I believed him because I wanted to believe I could be what he wanted. She looked up, eyes wet. I never understood what you did. The science, the research, it was like a foreign language. But I wanted so badly to matter. So you tried to steal something you didn't understand. I convinced myself it wasn't stealing, that it was just family resources being redistributed. She wiped her eyes. God, I sound just like him, don't I? Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with an urgent message from Sarah. FDA report dropping in 10 minutes. It's worse than we thought. The report was devastating. Years of rushed trials, manipulated data, and ignored safety protocols. Carter Pharmaceuticals stock plummeted. The board announced an emergency meeting. Madison read the news on her phone, her face paling. He knew, she whispered. Daddy knew about all of this. That's why he was so desperate to announce my version of your research. He needed a win to distract from what was coming. And you were his shield, I realized. If things went wrong, you'd take the fall as the inexperienced newcomer who mishandled everything. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I was so stupid. Looking at her, I felt my anger fade into something like pity. Yes, you were. But you weren't the only one he manipulated. My phone buzzed again. Dr. Chen. Alexandra. The board just voted. They're cleaning house. Your father, Deanne, the entire executive team. They want to talk to you. Me? Why? They want to restore the company's credibility. They're thinking about the symbolism of having Robert Carter's daughter, Catherine's daughter, help rebuild. I thought about my mother, about the company she'd built, about the principles she'd instilled in me. Then I thought about Carter Biotech, about the work we were doing, about the lives we could save. Tell them I'm honored. I said, but I've already got a company, one built on the same principles my mother valued. Madison was watching me. You're not coming back? No. But maybe it's time you built something of your own too. Something real this time. Later that evening, as I worked late in my lab, I had one final visitor, my father. He looked old, tired, nothing like the intimidating figure who tried to steal my research months ago. I suppose you're happy now, he said, sinking into a chair. The mighty Robert Carter, brought down by his own daughter. You brought yourself down. I corrected him. I just refused to let you take me with you. I was trying to protect the company. No, I cut him off. You were trying to protect yourself. Mom built that company on scientific integrity, on helping people. You turned it into a shell game of quick profits and corner cutting. He flinched at the mention of my mother. Catherine, she would be disappointed in me, wouldn't she? Yes, I said quietly she would. And you? What would make you happy now? Money? Control of the company? I gestured around my lab. This makes me happy. Real research, real science, real progress. Everything Mom taught me to value. He looked around, really seeing it for the first time. The state-of-the-art equipment, the busy researchers, the wall of whiteboards covered in complex formulas. You really did it, he said softly. Built all this on your own. No thanks to you. He stood slowly. I don't suppose there's any way to fix this. I thought about all the lies, the manipulation, the betrayal. Not between us, but you can still fix yourself. Tell the truth, take responsibility. Be someone Mom would have been proud of. After he left, I sat in my lab, thinking about everything that had happened. My father had tried to give away my life's work, but in doing so, he forced me to build something better. Something truly mine. Sarah found me there, hours later. The board's handling the FDA violations, implementing new oversight. They're talking about renaming the company, making a fresh start. Good, I said. It needs one. And us, the latest trials are showing amazing results. We're on track for FDA approval months ahead of schedule. I smiled, thinking of my mother, of her dedication to real science. Then let's keep going. There are people waiting for this treatment, lives we can save. Speaking of saving things, Sarah said, Madison called. She's enrolled in community college, studying basic chemistry. Says she wants to understand the science this time, not just pretend. I thought about Madison's tears in a cafe, about the weight of expectations and the courage it takes to start over. But for her, I said sincerely. The next morning, I arrived early at the lab, watching the sun rise through the windows. On my desk sat a small package. Inside was my mother's old lab notebook, sent by Dr. Chen. On the first page, she'd written words I'd never seen before. To my Alexandra, who sees the world not just as it is, but as it could be, Never let anyone dim your light or steal your dreams. You're capable of more than they know. Love, Mom. I traced her handwriting with my finger, feeling closer to her than I had in years. She'd known somehow that I'd need these words someday. Sarah appeared in my doorway, ready to change the world. I smiled, picking up my mother's notebook, more than ready. Let's show them what real innovation looks like. Looking out at my team, at the work we were doing, at the future we were building, I felt nothing but gratitude. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting better.